2011 F250 6.2 liter, stalls out, it stops intermittently, has cam codes. I'm going to replace the crankshaft sensor. So you want to remove the air intake tube and do the two clamps. Get that off there. Do your hose from here for coolant. You want to remove one off the throttle body. You got two bolts holding on there, 210s. And then you got a 8mm on the clamp. And that just clips in there into the housing. Goes in there like that. So if you can get to it, that's fine. Undo the clamp. Goes in there like that. Goes into those little grooves. So you can just pull this thing up out of the way. Make sure you disconnect the battery. And then you want to take off the alternator. So you want to undo your belt. Undo the alternator belt, serpentine belt, with the tool with the 1/2-inch square drive in there. Release the belt and take the belt off the alternator. Next you want to remove the alternator. It's held on by 3 15mm bolts. And you disconnected the batteries, and then you got a 10 here, no 13. And then disconnect your connector on the back. Squeeze the tab in and pull it up. Oh, that baby's tough. So anyway, get the alternator up, get that out of the way. You got the alternator off, out of the way. Now you can remove the alternator bracket. Remove the 4 10mm headed bolts. Okay, because the intake is pretty deep. You gotta take that off and get access to the sensor in the back, crank sensor. Next you want to undo is the vent tube on the back of the intake. This one, you're going to push the little white tab so you can pull the hose off for the breather. And then you want to remove all your coils. So you grab hold of the coil wire and twist it and then pull. Then you want to push the little red tabs back so you can push the tab down to release the connector, and then remove the 8mm headed bolts. There's 8 of them. If the red little connector breaks off inside there, you see it on the other side, you have to push that red piece out that direction, okay? Because that's what's keeping the connector connected. Okay, I pushed it out. Now you see the little tab inside there, you can pick that up and pull the connector off. Okay, you got all the coils off. Next thing you're gonna do is remove the fuel rail. But what you want to do is you want to blow out your spark plug boot holes. There's a lot of dirt in there, and then blow out the whole intake area. You do that before you get the intake off, so you don't have to worry about any dirt falling inside there. And also on this fuel line, you need to pull the bottom piece off. It's got a little grip on. Pull it out, and then you can push in on the top green part and pull it up. The bottom part's a lock with little notches on it, and then the one behind it, you push it in, and then you can pull the connector up. I'm gonna put that just right on there a little bit, just like that. Just set it there. Don't get no dirt in there, so you want to blow out these spark plug holes. Okay. Blow out the whole intake area. Next, you want to remove the fuel rail, so you want to go around and unplug all your injectors. Remember, you got to push in a little tab and you pull it off. Spray around each injector with some penetrant where they meet the head. So hopefully it'll come out. And then you got to remove all your bolts. There's 4 of them on each, 2 of them on each side. They're 8mm. Okay. Then when you get all the bolts on, you spray them with lubricant. Wiggle them around a little bit so that penetrant can get in there, and then pry them up at the same time. The whole fuel rail. Alright, get your injector rail out. Next you want to do is remove your throttle body, remove the connectors off of it. One here and one off to the other side. It goes to another thing. But anyway, disconnect the connector for the throttle body, remove the 4 bolts for the throttle body. Those are 10 millimeters. Then you want to space some penetrant around your intake to get to your bolts to help soak them so they don't get stuck and break off in the intake when you try to remove the bolts. There's like one here, one inside there, and there would be one here, but that's for the inside. 2 rail on the inside and the outside. So look for them all. There's 6 intake bolts on each side. And hopefully we can get it out without removing the thermostat tube. Alright, get the throttle body off. Next you want to remove is the vent solenoid. Take the 2 8mm bolts out for that. Pull it out and push it off to the side. Make sure your intake's loose. Now I'm going to try sliding it forward and see what I need to disconnect from behind. And the back wire is connected to here, and to here, and to here, and to there. Get them 4 off, and you're home free. Alright, there it is right there. There's the connector. Push in a little tab, pull it up. There's the 8mm bolt holding it in. And don't forget about your little house here. Right there's a cam sensor. And over here, there's a cam sensor. You're gonna replace those too. So spray them down with some penetrant, let them soak. And you can remove the 8mm head bolts. When you're pulling your sensors out, twist them. You got the bolts out, twist them, and pull at the same time. Okay? Got the cam sensor. And here's your crank sensor. See if there's any rust buildup on it. Alright. That's it. And also they say to clean up that mounting surface for the bolt, because that might hold it up just a little bit. Okay? Alright. That's how you get to the crank sensor. And since you're doing the crank sensor, do the cam sensors. Okay. Make sure you clean up the intake surface and blow out your intake ports, and also blow out your spark plug holes, and clean up the surface for the crank sensor. And you're all ready to go together on this part. Now you need to go clean the intake area where the seal rides for the intake gasket, and also for the injectors. And make sure you go to the injectors and wipe them off, and put some grease on the O-rings, diabetic grease or Seal Glide on the O-rings for the injectors, so they'll slide in better. Okay, you got your area cleaned, your intake base is clean of your heads. Put your sensors in, put some Seal Glide on the seals, push the sensors in and twist them, make sure they're fully seated, right and left. Cam sensors, put your crank sensor in, put a little lube on that seal that's on the crank sensor, push it down in through there, put your bolts on there and snug them up. You don't need to bear them down, they're just in there just to hold them. And on my intake surfaces for my heads, I put a little Seal Glide on them so they'll be able to slide with the gasket, the O-rings a little bit. So that's all cleaned up and it's all ready to go. I got all my intake gaskets, my intake seals in there. Put a little Seal Glide on there to help retain them, and also so they can slide on top of the head surface. Got my coils ready to go. Put some Seal Glide on the boots and inside the boots. Got my injectors ready to go. Clean them all up. Put some Seal Glide on the seals and O-rings to help ease the installation. So now I'm going to put on my intake. I'm all set to go. Make sure you pick it up and stick it in there and place it down where you need it to be. And I put the little bit of Seal Glide on there in case I need to center it. Alright, put your intake in there, start all your bolts. and start snugging them up from the inside out. I also put the injector rail bolts in just so they're lined up, so I don't have to guess and see if they're getting stripped out or not. So you can take them out now too. So you got all your intake bolts tightened up from the inside out equally. Okay, now you can hook up your harnesses in the back where the throttle body was in the back there, the two clips, clip those back in. Now you can put your fuel rail in and your 4 fuel rail bolts. Okay, line up your fuel rail with all the holes, wiggle it and push it down. Wiggle it and push them down. And get your bolts in there and start them and snug them up and then torque them all down. Next you want to do is put your spark plug boots in. If you're going to do spark plugs, you should do them now before you get any further. So if you didn't do spark plugs, now we're ready for the boots. The coils, okay? So put the coils in, and then put some anti-seize on your coil bolts. All right, next you want to go around and you want to plug in all your injectors, and then plug in your coils, and put your coil wires on your coils. Do that on both sides, and then put your breather tube back on the back of the intake over here, the big one. Make sure it clips in. And by now you probably realize that there's a right and left coils. I forgot to tell you about that. So anyway, the next thing you gotta do is put your fuel tank, the vent solenoid back onto the intake, and then put your vacuum line back on. There's a nipple on the back. And then you can do your throttle body and then connect your fuel line back up to the fuel rail. And push your retainer clips back in on that. When you hook up that fuel line, make sure you pull that bottom part of that green clip out all the way and push in on the top part. If that bottom part is not all the way out, you cannot push the top part in. So remember the two little grips on the side. All right, so you got it on. Put your bolts in there, put your vacuum line on, plug it in. Now you can do is change the gasket for your throttle body and put your throttle body on and snug it up. And then we can put our alternator bracket on. If you broke that fuel line clip, you can get that fuel line from Napa. That clip, there's the old number and the new number down below. I didn't break my clip, but that's the number you can use, okay? All right, throttle body's on, plug it in, connect the wire harness over there to the side of the clip. Got your alternator bracket on, down below 10mm bolts. Put your alternator up in there, put your wire harness bracket on top, do not forget it like I did. And put your bolts in there to 15mm, tighten them up, and then you want to put your belt on. All right, you got your 17 belt on. Now to put your box on, make sure you put that one boot back inside here. Remember the opening part on the bottom. And then put some lube on, so it slides on to the throttle body. Get it lined up. Put your 2 bolts in. And then tighten your clamp up in the back. And put your breather tube and the other vacuum line from in the back right here. Now you can put your air filter tube on. And then you can connect your battery back up and you can start it up and see how it runs. And that's it. That's how you replace the crank sensor with the cam sensors. If I helped you with this video, that's awesome. If you help me out by subscribing, I appreciate it. If you already subscribed to me, thank you.